Who's the best position player on this Boston Red Sox roster currently? Find out on today's Locked On Red Sox.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I am here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed for free. And honestly, who doesn't love free? You might as well take advantage of something that you don't have to pay for. So tune in to Locked On Red Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode of Locked On Red Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. Welcome to the show. Happy Friday as we get closer and closer to the All-Star break and also the trade deadline. So big things coming up here for this Red Sox team. And the moment in question has always been for a while now, what will the Red Sox do at the deadline? Will they be buyers? Will they be sellers? And before the season started, I did an episode of the show where I ranked the position players on the roster heading into the season. So this was based on their performances last year and whether I expected guys to grow and improve on their game. So I figured since it's now middle of the season, it'd be the appropriate time to do another position player ranking because some of it is going to be very different from what I had set before the season started based on the performances of some of these guys. So on today's show, it's going to be all about laying out the position players. Now, keep in mind, with all the injuries the Red Sox have had this year, I didn't really find it fair to include players like Vaughn Grissom or Tristan Casas in this, guys who haven't played a lot this year. So I was trying to take injuries into consideration and decided to just roll with the guys who have consistently been pretty healthy this year. So when you look at the Red Sox position players right now, they certainly as a team have surprised a lot of people in a positive way in terms of how they've been performing this year. And that's thanks to a lot of different players on this team. But the player that I have to put at the bottom of my list for position players right now is Reese McGuire. I mean, when you take into consideration everything that's happened with him this year, he started off very strong. He was hot to begin the season at the plate. He had adjusted something in his swing from last year and his plate approach that made him very successful early on. And it was great because in those first few weeks of the season, it was a fantastic catching tandem that we had in Connor Wong and Reese McGuire. Reese was somebody who would come in to pinch hit sometimes and would come in clutch with that big hit. And he was getting himself on base a lot of the time. Since then, he has digressed a lot. His batting average is dropped way down now in the season, and he's having a hard time stringing together hits. He's going a lot of 0 for 3 or 1 for 3 or even 0 for 4, not making a lot of contact anymore. And I worried about that happening with him. I felt like at some point he was going to come back down to earth and get to the point where he wasn't hitting as well, because I said, well, this would be fantastic if we had this version of Reese all year, but I thought it was too good to be true that that was the player he had become and more just that he had a hot start to the season. So unfortunately, I do have to put him at the bottom right now, but that could still change. At the end of the season, I'll do another ranking based on how these guys performed, and the list again could change. I just need him to step up in the second half in order for him to improve his ranking. But at the end of the day, he is a backup catcher, and Connor Wong, our main catcher, has played very well this year. So having Reese as a backup, that is what it is. He's naturally not going to be as good. So he's at the bottom right now. The next player on the list is somebody who has been pretty abysmal to watch this season for the Red Sox, and that is Dom Smith. Now, the Red Sox threw Dom into a stressful situation. I mean, Tristan Casas gets injured. They bring in him and Garrett Cooper to platoon at first base. And then when they finally got rid of Garrett Cooper, because he was even worse, it was then Dom and Bobby Dahlbeck alternating between playing first base. And then Dahlbeck got sent back down to AAA. And the thing was, Bobby's defense was good. He was a much better first baseman defensively than Dom Smith is. And Dom's ranking went way down because of his lack of ability to play defense at first base. I mean, there has been a lot of plays that he has misplayed the ball over there at first, and it's a little bit scary because it's cost the Red Sox multiple times. So because of his defense alone, he's low on the list, but also offensively, he doesn't make a huge impact in a lot of given situations. Every once in a while, he'll come up with a big hit, but that's the key there, is every once in a while. He has not been able to come up with the types of hits in big situations that he needs to. And that's tough because the Red Sox need somebody at first base who's going to be able to be reliable. And Dom Smith, to me, has not been reliable this year. And I hope that, this improves and we don't have to deal with him for too much longer, because Tristan Casas obviously will be returning for this Red Sox team soon. So then I imagine the Red Sox will DFA Dom Smith most likely at that point, but he has just been pretty abysmal to watch. And when I'm doing player rankings, I'm considering everything they've done to make a difference to this team overall. And he's just been a tough one to watch. Next, right above him on the list is a player who I want to be able to enjoy watching and trust a little bit more, but I still need to see more from him to get him into a higher tier, and that is Enmanuel Valdez. I think Valdez has gotten a little bit of the short end of the stick by having to go back down to AAA and being called back up and not really being given a fair shot to consistently stay up in the majors and prove himself. His defense has been pretty tough in the infield, and his offense has not been the greatest either. I mean, he's definitely a very average to below average hitter, I'd say right now is how I would describe him. I think the thing with Valdez is it's a time thing. He just needs more time and more experience. I do feel like there is potential there, and he could eventually get to the point where he is making big contributions for this Red Sox team. But right now, I can't really put him in a higher tier because he hasn't really wowed me. I think, his future with this Red Sox team is in question because they do have Vaughn Grissom, who is still working on getting healthy, and they have David Hamilton, who's emerged as a very versatile, talented middle infielder. Then they have Cedar Rafaela, who can play both in the infield and in the outfield. And then next season, presumably, Trevor Story will hopefully be healthy again. And then eventually Marcelo Meyer coming up. So Valdez is somebody that I could see the Red Sox moving at some point this season, or maybe even this off season, just because of the fact that I feel like there is not really a spot for him when it comes to the future of this team and speaking to what the Red Sox are trying to accomplish. So we'll see what happens with his future here, but I have to put him in a lower tier right now just because when you compare him to other position players on this team, he hasn't really done enough to contribute relative to others. Now we're getting into the middle tier of players, and this is pretty good to be in. I mean, these guys, just to be clear, would be good on other teams. The Red Sox just have a lot of talent offensively right now. So guys who are in this tier are guys who I still have faith in. I just don't see them as the best of the best. And next on the list, I'm putting Romy Gonzalez. Now, Romy definitely has a lot of upside. I feel like, especially, with his offense, he shows glimpses of what he can do with the bat. He has yet to showcase his power. I want to see that on more display this year for him. And again, too, he's been battling with injuries. So I think it's been too small of a sample size a little bit still for him for us to really know what he's going to turn into. But defensively, he overall has been able to lock in and be consistent. So that's something that I've definitely liked about him when it comes to watching him play. So I think we just need to see more of him. But right now, the reason I'm putting him in the middle and not towards the bottom is because when he is out there, he's making more of a positive impact than a negative one. And I think that's huge for this Red Sox team right now. So I'm putting Romy Gonzalez in, the middle tier of players. And coming up, I'm going to be continuing with my rankings of the Red Sox position players. And I think you might be a little bit surprised. This episode of Locked On Red Sox is brought to you by Booking.com. Yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival's city. For example, I am a big Red Sox fan, but next time I plan a baseball trip, I am definitely using Booking.com. My fiance and I want to see every baseball ballpark one day. So this is going to be really handy for us to plan those trips moving forward. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. If you're anything like me and are completely clueless about cars, eBay Motors will be an absolute lifesaver, so be sure to check it out today. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you really are looking to stay caught up in all things going on in sports, our team here at Locked On will keep you up to date no matter where you are. So make sure that you subscribe to that today. I am currently doing my mid-season ranking of all the Red Sox position players. I did it when the season started, so I felt like it would be appropriate to do it at the midway point too, because some of the rankings have changed since the beginning of the season, some shuffling around because guys are really stepping up and producing in ways that we might not have expected early on. So into the middle tier of players, I did put Romy Gonzalez as kind of the lowest in that middle tier. And I think it's simply because of the fact that I still want to see more from him. Small sample size, which obviously isn't his fault, but I'm definitely not convinced enough yet with his productivity. I think there's certainly upside there and he's shown his potential, but I have to stick him in that lower middle tier. Right above him, though, is somebody who for certain has not been living up to expectations this year, and that is Masataka Yoshida. I thought that when the Red Sox took him out of the outfield and primarily made him a DH, that things would get better for him in terms of his ability to produce. And he has not been able to produce at a competitive level as a designated hitter. He did spend some time on the IL this year, but it's become to the point where I'm scared that he's not going to be able to fully figure it out. And yes, he's been stringing together some singles, maybe a double here and there, but he's not consistently hitting well. And that's the issue. And when he was able to focus on just hitting, that's when I thought, okay, this could be good for him because he doesn't have to worry about his defense since that's not very good. But so far, it hasn't really worked out too well. And he does have a relatively big contract with this Red Sox team. So I'm really hoping that he turns things around quickly. But I cannot put him in that higher tier of players right now just because he hasn't done enough for me to feel confident in his abilities when he's out there. And it's sad when I feel like it's an automatic out every time. I feel like that's a big yikes when he's at the plate and I'm not excited to see him up there. So that's something he definitely needs to figure out and be able to make the most of his at bats and be able to make an impact more. So I'm putting him in that middle tier, which I feel like could be a little bit generous right now. He definitely needs to step up more. Right above him is a player who is a great defender and has served as a power bat this year, and that's Tyler O'Neill. His biggest thing is staying on the field. He has hit the IL some this season, and I'm hoping he can stay healthy moving forward the rest of the season. But he primarily is a home run heavy hitter. He does strike out a good amount, and he doesn't really make a lot of hard contact other than the long ball. So Tyler O'Neill is somebody who we knew what we were getting from him when we brought him on from a defensive standpoint because he has always been effective with the glove, but we weren't really sure what type of bat he was going to bring to the table. And he certainly is providing some power in a lineup that doesn't have a lot of guys who can hit home runs super regularly. So definitely having that is a benefit for this Red Sox team. But the reason I'm not putting him in the top tier of players right now is because of the fact that he can be sluggish at the plate, and we do need to see more from him in order to put him in that very high tier of position players right now. And there's a lot of things about Tyler O'Neill that I like. I like his attitude. I like his ability to go out there and just crush baseballs. I like how confident he comes across when he's out there. I think he's a hard worker, and I think that he's somebody who certainly will be able to continue contributing for this team, but I definitely want to see more from him in terms of relying less on just the home run and trying to find ways to get on base in other ways. So that's why I have Tyler O'Neill where I have him right in the middle as opposed to in the upper tier of Red Sox position players right now. Next on the list is a player who has been utilizing a lot of his speed this year to get around the bases, and it's been something that has really helped the Red Sox out, and that is David Hamilton. He's a player who I feel has a ton of upside because of his athleticism alone and his ability to get on base and generate runs just because he can steal bases easily and stretch singles into doubles. That skill alone is super valuable. That puts him more towards the upper tier of Red Sox position players right now because they need to be able to score runs and they need to be able to have guys on base who can come around and score. And that's something that David Hamilton has been able to do effectively. From an offensive standpoint, he definitely could use a little bit more work, but I think that's all it's going to take is work because he was called up last year, didn't spend a ton of time in the majors, so we saw a little bit of what he could do then, but it wasn't to the point where he was getting to play pretty much every day. And he has kind of solidified himself right now as more of an everyday player for this Red Sox team. So it'll be interesting to see how they approach the situation at shortstop moving forward, if they want to keep him on the active roster with the other talent that they have potentially playing that position over the next few years. So I like Hamilton from the standpoint of it's very rare that you see speed like that at the major league level. So he is valuable in that regard, but I definitely want to be able to see him do some more with the bat and be able to contribute more often than he is from an offensive standpoint. But I do like David Hamilton. I think there's a ton of upside that he provides. The next player I'm putting on this list is somebody who has been fantastic defensively this year and is starting to really find his groove offensively, and that is Ceddanne Rafaela. Now, this one was tough for me because I kept saying, does he deserve to be in the higher tier of Red Sox position players right now? But if you look at the growth from what we saw from him at the beginning of the season to now, it's definitely been drastic. And yes, he still needs a lot of work at the plate, still generating lots of swings and misses, and his plate discipline could definitely be better. But overall, when you're looking at this player and what he brings to the table, his defense alone puts him in a higher tier because he is going to make a lot of those plays in the outfield that we need him to make. He is not as good of a defender in the infield, and the Red Sox have been having him play shortstop a good amount too, due to injuries this year. But when they're looking long term, they should stick to him being in the outfield because that's where he makes his highlight reel plays. It's where he looks the most comfortable. And when it comes to defense, the Red Sox definitely could use his outfield defense. So he is in a higher tier because of that. But he's also been able to showcase his speed on the base paths this year, which gives him more versatility that he can provide. And from an offensive standpoint, the fact that he has been starting to figure things out more makes me put him in this position because he has definitely been somebody who has provided a lot of value for this Red Sox team in multiple ways. And if you're a versatile player who has very good defense and can contribute in other ways offensively, you're going to be in a higher tier of players. And Rafaela is somebody also who I just see being a huge piece of the future for this Red Sox team, especially because of how good he is defensively and the fact that the Red Sox extended him because of that. So I feel like he's somebody that moving forward will consistently be in the conversation of very talented Red Sox position players. So I had to put him in that higher tier based on his productivity this year because of that. Next on the list in the higher tier players is Rob Refsnyder. Now, Refsnyder has had his struggles defensively in the outfield this year. He's had a couple nightmare situations in which he has bobbled some balls and couldn't make the play he needed to make. So his defense drops him down a little bit, but he has been too productive offensively this year to not put him high up. And the biggest thing about Refsnyder to me is that he's always been good against left-handed pitching, but now he's turned it on against righties too. And he's figured out a way to hit really well against both right-handed and left-handed pitching. And that's something that's been great for this Red Sox team. And when you think about Refsnyder and his impact, not only has he made a huge impact offensively, but as a veteran leader in the clubhouse, that's another thing to consider when it comes to him and his importance to this Red Sox team right now, is he's able to provide some experience to the younger guys in this locker room. And he has the ability to just kind of be thrown into whatever role the Red Sox need him to be thrown into. He could come in to pinch hit and can come up with a big hit. He can play defense in the outfield. He could play in the infield. Sometimes they don't really play him in the infield because they don't need to, but he could if he had to. So he's a versatile player who can play a lot of different types of roles on this team. So that to me is super valuable. So I had to put Refsnyder in that upper tier of players. And coming up, I'm going to be listing my top of the top, the players who I feel have made the most impact for this Red Sox team as position players this season. So you definitely won't want to miss that. Here on Locked On Red Sox, we pride ourselves on getting you the latest news for your team. Whether it's the offseason, the draft, spring training, or the playoffs, it's year-round. You know what else is year-round? Collections season. Just because tax season is over doesn't mean the IRS will stop coming after you for unfiled taxes. The IRS can garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, and even seize your property. Don't let the IRS target you. Let the licensed professionals and tax experts at Tax Network USA go to bat for you. My favorite thing about them is they make the process of filing taxes so easy, and they make sure you're not missing anything because you know how much of a penalty it could be if you forget to report something. So they will help you with that process so seamlessly to make it completely a lot more bearable. With over 14 years of experience and an A+ rating by the Better Business Bureau, Tax Network USA has saved their clients over $1 billion in tax debt. Whether you owe taxes, have complicated matters that require tax planning, or finally hit that parlay this season and need help correctly filing, call 1-800-549-1000 or visit tnusa.com/lockedon. And be sure to mention Locked On Red Sox at checkout and you'll receive a $250 discount off their services. This is too good of a deal to turn down, honestly. So I highly encourage you to check that out today. Sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do these have in common? You're probably buying a ton again this summer. But don't stress about the cost. Use Ibotta and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, that flight you've been eyeing, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying it by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Hey, if you're trying to save some money on shopping trips, you will not be disappointed in Ibotta. Also, just a reminder to subscribe to Locked On Sports today on YouTube or Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app so that you can stay up to date in the latest on all things going on in sports. No matter where you're at or what time zone you're in, our Locked On experts have you covered. So be sure that you check that out today. In ranking the Red Sox position players halfway through the season, there have definitely been a lot of guys who have surprised this year, and you could argue that David Hamilton could be in that category of guys that have been surprising for this Red Sox team this year. But there have been a few players from a position player standpoint who have just absolutely excelled and have been the keys to this Red Sox team this year. So next on my list in the higher tier of players is somebody who has just had a breakout season so far. He was a September call-up last year, and we saw glimpses of what he could do this year. And now that he's out there on the field this year, he is making an impact, and that is Wilyer Abreu. I mean, talk about some really nice plays that he's made in the outfield on top of being able to contribute offensively in a lot of different ways. He's somebody that opposing pitchers don't want to go up against because he has a lot of different skills that he can bring offensively. And what I really like about his game is his ability to consistently find ways to get better, even when you think he can't. I mean, he's elevating in his offensive stats. He did start off a little bit slow once he came back from the injured list, but he is seeming to be getting it together again now. And I just find that he is somebody who consistently has been locked in and has been contributing to this Red Sox team in a variety of different ways. And if they're looking at the future of what the outfield is going to look like, I feel like Abreu is somebody who the Red Sox should seriously consider keeping around because I feel like he just has a ton of talent. And it's going to be tough when they have to make these hard decisions on guys like him and Cedar Rafaela, because Rafaela is versatile, and the fact that he also can play in the infield, although not as well, might give him a leg up if it comes to having to choose between the two of them. But Abreu's bat would be a big loss if they don't have him anymore, and that's why I put him in the higher tier of players, because when I'm ranking these guys, I'm thinking about the overall impact that they've made on this team this year, and Abreu has made a major impact in a positive way for the Red Sox. The next player is somebody who I mentioned earlier on in the show and has been such a complete surprise for the Red Sox this year, and that is Connor Wong. He is an above average defensive catcher statistically. He's throwing out base stealers. He is able to make some really nice plays behind the dish, and he has been producing offensively too. And this is not the version of Connor Wong that we've seen in the past. We definitely saw a guy who was struggling to make things work offensively and stay consistent, and he just wasn't finding that success at the plate that we're seeing from him now. And something must have clicked in his head, because it's been like this all season long. He has been consistent. He's been getting himself on base. He's been mashing baseballs, and his plate discipline has been very good. He is that position player on this team who I feel has great plate discipline when it comes to working counts, finding his pitch, and then eventually sliding the ball up the middle for a single. He has had a great season this year, and rightfully so, was in the All-Star conversation among catchers for a while, and I still feel like he definitely could be deserving of being there. He just has had a really good season for this Red Sox team and is hard to ignore, and I'm looking forward to the future of this Red Sox catching tandem for when Kyle Teal eventually does get called up, and you have him paired with Connor Wong. That could be one of the best catching tandems in baseball. So I really like what Connor Wong has done this year, and that's why he is very high up on this list in the top 3 right now. Number 2 is the face of the Boston Red Sox franchise, a guy who signed a massive extension with the team recently and is going to be around for a long time, and that is the one and only Rafael Devers. He just is that guy. He'll hit his home runs constantly. He's a home run machine as of late. And he just is that guy whenever you feel like you need somebody to come up big and get that big hit. You can count on Devers to do that. And that's what somebody who's making as much money as he is getting paid to do, is to come up big in those types of situations. Now, I did hesitate a little bit with Devers just because his defense is not exactly up to par with his offense. He has shown a little bit of growth in that area, but he still every once in a while kind of fumbles the bag defensively. So that's something to keep an eye on with him. I think towards the end of this contract, we might see him eventually just be a DH overall and not really be playing defense and not see him at third base. So that could be something to keep an eye on over the next couple seasons. But I couldn't really put him number 1 just because he has had his defensive blunders this year. But overall, it's hard to ignore his offense and what he provides just by being Rafael Devers, and how opposing pitchers don't like to pitch against him, especially in close games. So that alone is valuable and something that you need to keep in mind when it comes to ranking these players, because he is still a scary hitter, and in the most opportune moments, he'll come through for this Red Sox team more often than not. And if you're an opposing pitcher, you fear that sometimes. So that's why Rafael Devers is number 2 on the list. And number 1, I'm sure you figured it out already because his name has not been mentioned yet. But this is a player who I feel overall has contributed the most to this Red Sox team from a position player standpoint. He pretty much does it all. He can play in the outfield well. He has the speed on the base paths. He's hitting home runs. He's hitting singles and doubles and stretching them out into multiple bases. Yes, you guessed it, Jarren Duran, the one who very much rightfully so should be in the All-Star game. And this was a pretty easy decision to put him at number 1 because no other player on this Red Sox team right now is doing as much as he's doing. He literally is making everything happen, and he's really showcasing just the fact that he's a 5-tool player who offers a lot of different things to this Red Sox team. And if you are that type of player, you are going to have success in the majors, and that's making it pretty much impossible for the Red Sox to even consider trading him ever, because his value goes well beyond just his plate appearances or just his nice plays defensively. He has a sense of being able to make a lot of different things happen, and it makes him a very special baseball player. And when you look at this Red Sox team as a whole, he is the one who's been the glue, making so many different things happen, and it's been crazy fun to watch. And I had a feeling he was going to have a season like this because we did see this last year. He was really turning things on and having a fantastic season at the plate. So going into this year, I had high hopes for Duran, and he is living up to those expectations and even surpassing them. He has just been very, very good this year and the most fun player to me to watch on this team. And it's hard to ignore just how much he really provides. So I hope he remains in a Boston Red Sox uniform for the rest of his career, just because he's so special. And he's somebody who I feel just deserves to be there and deserves to be able to make an impact on a team that hopefully is going to start seeing some competitiveness and potential championship teams. So I'm a huge fan of Jarren Duran. He is number 1 on my list of position player rankings right now. All of this to say that this could still change. I mean, by the end of the season, we could be having a very different conversation about some of these players, depending on how the second half goes. There's still a lot of baseball left to be played this year before the playoffs, and you don't really know who's going to turn it on in the second half, who's going to slow down a little bit. So these rankings are based on the current moment right now, but things could still change. So we're going to have to see how it plays out for the next few months, but I think it could be a lot of fun for Red Sox fans to watch this team with the way that they're figuring things out now. So as always, keep the faith, go Red Sox, and I will catch you on the flip side.